This video made use of AI to dub the audio from Punjabi to English, but we have not used AI to change or alter anything anybody has said in this video, and all of the words that you hear are direct translations of the original speech. By the end of 2021, Sidhu Moosewala had conquered the music world, with billions of streams to his name and classic projects in the bag, but behind the music, he had ambitions of much more than just entertaining. He was incredibly vocal during the farmers' protests and used his music as an outlet for the feelings on the streets. And clearly, deep down, he wanted to bring about change in India through politics. So after helping his mother campaign in 2018, eventually it would be time for Sidhu to launch a campaign of his own. So, on the 3rd of December 2021, Sidhu joined Indian National Congress, and he was set to contest in the 2022 Punjab Legislative Assembly elections. He launched his political career in the presence of Chief Minister Charanjit Singh Channi and PPCC President Navjot Singh Sidhu. With this support and backing, as well as his own popularity as a pop star in Punjabi music, Sidhu's campaign was looking like an easy win.
Popular Punjabi singer and rapper Sidhu Moosewala joined the Congress on Friday ahead of the assembly polls early next year. Moosewala joined the party in the presence of Chief Minister Charanjit Singh Channi and State Congress Chief Navjot Singh Sidhu. Sidhu said that Moosewala will contest the upcoming polls. The Congress is likely to field Moosewala from Mansa or Bhatinda. After joining the Congress, Moosewala said he had started his music career 4 years ago, but was now ready to take a new step in his life.
From the beginning, I was coming from the village. We were raised in ordinary families. God gave us a lot of progress. We went to the same house when we were among the people, when then name of a child. From a normal family in a normal village was mentioned. The people who were around started expecting from him.
However, after announcing his entry into the political arena, something unexpected happened, as many fans of Sidhu were shocked that their favourite gun-toting gangster rapper was suddenly trying to become part of the system. But even more shocking to many was a departure from his usually firm principles as a Sikh, as the Congress party he was set to join had historically been seen as an enemy of the Sikh religion, as they were in power during the 1984 Sikh genocide and allowed Operation Blue Star to go ahead. Operation Blue Star was the code name for the attack on the Sikhs' most holy building, the Golden Temple, or Harmandir Sahib. The aim was to remove the leader of a Sikh religious group named Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale was the leader of the Damdami Taksal, a Sikh religious group based in Punjab, India in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Bhindranwale carried heavy influence amongst many Sikh youth in Punjab during this time as the leader of Taksal, and he spread the original values of Sikhism and persuaded people young and old to follow the original rules and tenets of the religion, and he demanded freedom and basic human rights for the Sikhs. Now, he hadn't been on record in support of the creation of the Sikh-based state of Khalistan in Punjab, but he was apparently not opposed to it either. Subsequently, he was largely demonized by the media as a separatist and terrorist, yet all he was really pleading for was the right of the Sikh people. And on June the 1st, as he refused to leave the premises of the Golden Temple, the Indian government launched an onslaught against anyone inside, killing thousands and destroying the holy site.
June 6, 1984, the sound of gunfire disrupted the usual peace in the corridors of the Golden Temple. The holiest shrine of the Sikhs had become home to terrorists and goons, armed with heavy ammunition and artillery. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale, head of the Damdami Taksal, along with his 600-odd supporters, had been hiding in the temple for over a year. By the time the operation ended, he had been eliminated. The order to carry out what was called Operation Blue Star had come from then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi. She was clear: flush out terrorists from the Golden Temple. The operation was codenamed Blue Star. It was the Indian Army's biggest operation within the country. Indira Gandhi was criticized by many for Operation Blue Star. Even though the leader Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale was eliminated, tensions continued to run high in Punjab. All of it came to head on 31st October 1984. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi was shot dead by her own Sikh bodyguards for ordering the operation. That in turn led to a chain of events. There were anti-Sikh riots in Delhi and other cities. It took years before Punjab could return to normal, and even after 35 years, the wounds of that period are still fresh in the minds of those who were witness to the atrocities and violence.
In the attack, around 5,000 innocent people were killed, men, women, and children. Bullets, artillery, and rockets were all used on innocent pilgrims who were visiting their holy place. Essentially, the magnitude of this attack would be the same as if the army were to attack the Vatican, and in retaliation to Operation Blue Star, the Prime Minister of India at the time, Indira Gandhi, was assassinated by her 2 Sikh bodyguards for allowing the operation. Following the assassination, the 1984 anti-Sikh riots then took place, with the Congress Party openly encouraging the violence against the Sikh people. Decades had passed without any justice for these incidents, and even today, the matter is mostly ignored, with just one main arrest of a Congress leader for supposedly inciting the violence. Even recently, a UK national, Jagtar Singh Johal, was arrested without charge and has been subject to police brutality and torture by the Indian government for spreading awareness about the issue. To this day, he is still not being released, and the UK government is seemingly also doing nothing about it. That's a whole lot of history, and I'll be honest, I'm not that deeply educated in Indian political history, so I gotta shout out my researcher Gav, who helped me write this story and talked me through a lot of the history that I wasn't aware of when we started looking into this. But I say all of that to say, the fact that Sidhu wanted to align himself with this particular party disappointed and enraged many of his Sikh and Punjabi fans, many of whom considered him a voice of the people, but this party ultimately didn't align with their views at all. To some fans, this was literally like Sidhu joining forces with the Ops, and even more surprising when considering how much Sidhu has previously spoken up for Sikh issues in the past, especially in his music, it just didn't make sense to a lot of people. Now, Sidhu reacted to the criticism in an attempt to explain his choices, suggesting to fans that all political parties are tainted in some form and that he simply had to choose the lesser of the evils in order to take a step forward and break into politics. Sidhu was then asked about whether Operation Blue Star had had an effect on him, and Sidhu shared his disdain for the actions carried out by Congress in 1984, actually admitting that he believed the actions of the party were wrong and caused countless people trauma and immeasurable loss.
Does the 1984 Operation Blue Star still have an impact on you?
Who has not been impacted by it? Even though I joined Congress, I will still say the party was wrong. With that mistake in those times, countless people lost so much. How many people died, and then the Prime Minister was killed. Such was the atmosphere that was created at that time. I believe Punjab would have been 60 to 70 years ahead if such events did not take place.
Sidhu then delves into even more controversial territory as he leads the conversation towards Khalistan, the nation-state that many Sikh people hoped would be established in the original partition between India and Pakistan in 1947. That never happened, and many Sikh and Punjabi people still have the desire to establish their own state. This conversation today is almost seen as a taboo topic in India based on the history of senseless violence used to suppress anyone in favour of the proposed country, as well as violence from those who wish to establish it, which is often labelled as terrorism. So Sidhu even talking about this issue was actually very bold, especially when you consider the backlash that he knew he would be getting on his career for speaking openly about such controversial topics. In modern day India, many people have been demonized for opposing the government and wishing for independent sovereignty, and many of the people who do indeed wish for an independent state of Khalistan to be established are often targeted and labelled as separatists or even terrorists, with some suggesting that this is an unfair label to put on everyone who advocates for this cause, despite it allegedly only being a small minority of people who advocate for violence in the name of that cause. Sidhu would explain in his interview that the media has the whole idea wrong and that the term Khalistan actually refers to a peaceful utopia.
What taunts are you talking about?
They taunt us by saying we are Khalistani people, but we still have not fully understood the true meaning of Khalistani. The meaning of Khalistan
You
is...
mean that empire?
Yes, that empire. A kingdom where people respected the Guru and thought twice before committing any sins. Where people earn an honest living with their hands. Where people fully embrace God's will. Where not even a leaf moves without with order. That is what we consider Khalistan. Is wishing for such Khalistan is a bad thing. People are not aware of a lot of things when propaganda gets involved. I don't know a lot of things either. But I am reading a lot of books now. But from what my understanding is, we need to build an administration like Maharaja Ranjit Singh that will not discriminate on the basis of religion, where everyone, including Hindus, Muslims and Sikhs, can be brothers. When I see Shiv Sena fight Singhs, what do you think is making them fight? Just a handful of people. So there is a need for us to create a system. Khalis means pure and Sten means place. Who is going to make this pure place? We would have to make it.
The day after his entry into the Congress Party, Sidhu posted on Instagram posing in front of a commercial agricultural vehicle in traditional attire, essentially saying that the circumstances had forced him to change, inferring that he's had to adapt his beliefs in order to get into politics and hopefully bring about change, going on to suggest that he has plans to clean up the roads and make the streets safe now that he's getting into politics. From the end of 2021, Sidhu began to get involved heavily with local and national politics in India, and by the start of 2022, Sidhu's campaign was in full swing, and posters began circulating around his home city of Mansa. On the 15th of February 2022, Sidhu held his first election rally, but things didn't exactly get off to the best start. His tattoos and attire were all being torn apart by the public, which apparently upset Sidhu, as he sees his public persona as a pop star as completely different to how he would behave as a politician.
I was very emotional during elections. People would make comments about Sandy's picture on my tractor, tattoos on my arms. They used to ask me questions like they are interviewing me for a marriage proposal, like how they ask if the boy does any drugs or not.
But Sidhu didn't let any detractors slow him down, and as the weeks went on, he'd roll up his sleeves and get active in the streets, being seen in the streets surrounded by people campaigning on behalf of his political movement. However, in the midst of his campaigning, disaster struck, and suddenly Sidhu was in hot water for a campaign violation. In the election campaign, Sidhu was alleged to have violated the election code of conduct by a public servant by holding campaign demonstrations door to door in the Mansa constituency after the end of the allotted duration of 6 p.m, which was apparently the latest that you could canvass. This resulted in a case being filed against him under section 188 of the Indian Penal Code, essentially for disobedience by a public servant that causes annoyance to the people. Clearly, whoever was in charge was making sure that Sidhu was held responsible for even the slightest violation. In the end, unfortunately, despite his best efforts, on the 20th of February, it was reported that Sidhu had been defeated in the polls by a candidate from the AAP party named Vijay Singla. The winner from AAP, or Aam Aadmi Party, Vijay Singla, had gained 100,023 votes, with Sidhu gaining only 36,700 in the Mansa constituency, a large loss with a gap of around 63,323 votes. Initially, Sidhu would react to the loss with class in an interview where he claimed that he was resilient and that this was not the end, but really the beginning of what he hoped would be future political success.
So it's not about that. To get into politics was a voice of mind, and I did it solely for that. At the end, if people didn't agree with it, that's fine. I will try next time.
In your songs, you talk about your character as someone who cannot be suppressed. Do you feel your defeat in the elections in your mind? Was you being suppressed?
No, when I say I cannot be suppressed, I mean I keep moving. Keep moving towards your aim, towards your goal. One type of depression is when you feel down and give up. Depression is a climatic change in our behavior. Everyone goes through it. I felt it too when I lost the elections. But if you lose once, it doesn't mean you can never win. I have lost many times before, even in my own profession. But I also achieved such victories that the entire world knows about it too. So this was the first defeat in this field. I have said this before, not all bricks have to be used for the palace walls. Some are used for the foundation. I laid these for the foundations, the next ones will build the palace.
Did you feel at some point that you shouldn't have joined politics? Or that you wasn't built for this?
I did feel it when our own people whom you stood up to support start mocking you by saying, look, he lost, or they are towing 5911 tractor. That's the time I questioned myself. I stood for these people, those who were laughing at my loss. What was the need for me to take a stand for them? I stood for them. The same people mocked me saying, look, Moosewala is finished now. What was the need for Moosewala to do all this? That was the moment I felt all this. But I reminded myself to keep moving and not be suppressed.
Sidhu would then choose to address the election loss in his next single ahead of the release of his next EP, dropping a track called Scapegoat. The artwork itself was a massive middle finger to Sidhu's recent haters, and you can tell that Sidhu is furious on the track, angrily biting back at every single person who criticized him during his run for the Congress Party. On Scapegoat, Sidhu pulls no punches and even goes at his own audience, the government, and starts up new beef with famous singers. Sidhu begins the track wasting no time, straight away addressing the criticism of him choosing the wrong party and losing the election, clapping back, claiming that if the party was so wrong, then why did they win in the past, painting a picture that suggests that Sidhu had chosen them because he believed they would be the most likely route to winning the election. Sidhu went on to say that he clearly felt betrayed by his own people, questioning them directly as to why they would vote for that party 3 times before, but when he runs for them, they lose. Sidhu would then call out his haters, saying if they voted for that party 3 times before, then they're good, but now he's running for them, he's getting hate, asking the audience directly who elected whose government, pointing the finger at them and saying that the so-called bad party wasn't so bad when they won the last 3 elections. Sidhu would go on to vent how it's hypocritical to call him a traitor of the Sikh religion because when he gave the public the chance to put an actual Sikh in office, they were traitors to him and they didn't vote for him, with Sidhu asking the listener who is the traitor now, then bringing up other important candidates that the community had made lose in the past, calling the electorate two-faced. And he also mentions how these same people had made the farmers they had previously been supporting lose in the election too, because that that pro-farming party that they said Sidhu should have joined also lost the election. He would also bring up Operation Blue Star in 1984 again, referencing another former politician who resigned as a sign of protest, before going on to say that the electorate also failed to support Deep Sidhu, the farmers' rights advocate who was mentioned earlier that died in that suspicious road accident. Sidhu would then send shots at Punjabi singer Gary Sandhu, who had claimed that Sidhu was full of ego when he clowned Sidhu for losing the election. Sidhu called him a moron and criticised him for not being able to handle his own relationship with singer Jasmine Sandlas, which apparently ended quickly. Sidhu then questions Gary Sandhu's gangster by saying that there's no point in making comments from behind the screen if you're not going to do something about it. In the next verse, Sidhu discusses the corruption within all political parties, even his own, whilst comparing them to the opposing acolytes, explaining that all the parties are the same, just a different logo. Sidhu then goes on to reference the governing party AAP, who interestingly were the party who removed his personal security later in 2022, claiming that this party got into the parliament and are now minimising issues important to the Punjab region. Then, in the final verse, Sidhu goes on to explain that he's proud of what he's done for Musa, giving the impoverished people a name and putting the city on the map, whilst also explaining that he has no ill will about losing the election and that it's really just the beginning for him. Sidhu then goes at the people who have turned their backs on him since the polls, comparing the experience to being crucified and saying that he has the blood of a triumphant Sikh and that there are idiots in all chambers of Indian politics. The video then ends with a message for the viewers, asking them to stop putting the blame on others and first reflect on themselves. Scapegoat was Sidhu lashing out at all of his naysayers and setting the record straight after an embarrassing election defeat. But also, this was a tough moment for the Sidhu Moosewala brand. The voice of the Jats, the man who was supposed to stand up for the common man in Musa, arguably sold out some of his most important political principles for a shot at power, and in the end, the whole plan ended in an embarrassing failure. And now, Sidhu was aiming his anger at the very public who supported him to fame in the first place. This was a tough situation for Sidhu to manage, but naturally, music would be the perfect place for him to vent his frustrations. A couple months after his election defeat, on the 25th of April 2022, Sidhu blessed his fans with more music, releasing the No Name EP. The EP contained 5 bangers, which saw Sidhu taking his raps back to his old ways. On the opening track, Never Fold, Sidhu begins his verse by boasting about his criminal past, giving some insight as to when he began getting into trouble with the law, as he sings, "I got my first charge when I was 18, and nowadays claiming that he doesn't use his Range Rover to chase women, inferring that he's instead chasing the ops, and saying that he plays with Magnum revolvers for his enemies rather than roses for women. Sidhu claims that he's known for the weapon on his waist, and how his drum magazine is full of hollow tips, ready for his enemies. In the next verse, Sidhu again begins to discuss his limited time left in his life, believing that his path is leading him to hell, and explaining how his peak and demise will all be in his youth. He would even warn any potential love interests that they will always be in tears, as Sidhu will always be surrounded by danger. The song went on to become one of Sidhu's best performing on the EP, with the audio alone having over 150 million views on YouTube. The next song on the EP was titled Lovesick, and featured Sidhu rapping from a female's perspective who was in love with him, and the song beginning with a snippet from a news report detailing how Sidhu managed to escape the police while being on the run. He then sings from the female perspective, worrying about Sidhu's name always being in the news. And in the second verse, Sidhu raps in a flow faster than he has used any other time in his career, and he would go on to mention how many shooters are trying to kill Sidhu for their 15 minutes of fame. Sidhu was clearly more than aware of the potential threats against him and all the people that wanted him dead in the streets. He would even mention how government officials may leak his location to these people that want to kill him. The next track would be another love song titled Everybody Hurts, which is followed by the UK drill inspired banger 0 to 100, and the final track Bloodlust, another gun-toting anthem, with the visuals showing men masked up, loading rifles and counting money. The video opens with a creepily foreshadowing shot of a bullet in a car windshield, and in the verse, Sidhu raps about shooting his gun and making his ops scared to cross Musa, and he again mentions that his days remaining were numbered, almost as if he knew something was waiting for him around the corner. Regardless, Sidhu clearly didn't let the mishap of the election hold him back, and he would go straight back to dropping fire music for his fans. It was as if Sidhu was going on a similar run as the beginning of his career, dropping banger after banger and flooding the scene with great music. And just the next month, Sidhu released yet another massive single. On the 15th of May 2022, Sidhu would release his track, The Last Ride. The cover art featured the image of Tupac's car after it was tragically shot up during the day of his murder. Once again, an incredibly haunting scene when you know what's coming next. The Last Ride now sits at almost 300 million views and was a certified hit for Sidhu, perhaps for all of the wrong reasons. The West Coast inspired track sees Sidhu toting his pistol and throwing up West Side gang signs, as well as discussing how staying rebellious has not been easy for him. And in the hook, he mentions how he believes he's destined to have his funeral while he's young, even saying that this is prophesized whilst holding a gun to his head. Within 2022, Sidhu mentions this more than ever. He definitely felt that his time was limited and something was lurking around the corner at this point. In the next verse, Sidhu mentions that he has beef with multiple prominent men from regions all over Punjab. But regardless of how numbered his days were, Sidhu was aware that his influence was like something never before seen in Punjab, and saying that he's essentially immortalized by his extensive catalogue of bangers and revolutionary anthems. The Last Ride wasn't Sidhu's last song, but it was certainly an important moment. On the 20th of May, Sidhu dropped yet another one of his biggest songs to date, a track titled Levels, which came with a cover art showing both of Sidhu's diamond-encrusted watches whilst he clutches his custom pistol. The track, now sitting at 224 million views, features Sidhu's best visuals to date. It's clear that his budgets were increasing, and this music video was just like a movie. The song begins with Mike Tyson's epic speech calling out Lennox Lewis, and Sidhu begins the track speaking English, calling his ops broke as F. And in a dig seemingly at the political class he was beefing with, he would mock his enemies for seeking a lifetime pension and using Sidhu's name for prominence, with the hook explaining that whoever they compare to Sidhu, they're not on his level. In the next verse, Sidhu disses yet another artist he once collaborated with, Prem Dillon, from the song Old School, calling him a Jat imitator from Canada, and claims that he's nothing when in front of Sidhu, even calling himself the devil, as well as saying that he dissed him behind his back, questioning the fact that he asked Sidhu to pay him for a verse. Sidhu then continues explaining that anyone who beefs with him is his son, and they got their starts just by speaking about Sidhu. And still not letting up on his original op Karen Aujla, Sidhu claims that he shouldn't have flexed his feature with the West Coast artist YG because he paid him for a verse. From releasing No Name just 1 month prior and dropping 2 massive singles back to back the next month, Sidhu was going on the run of a lifetime, even mentioning on Levels the quick success of his prior EP, and soon rumours were beginning to spread that the next song Sidhu was due to drop might just be his most controversial one yet, calling out the Indian government for the several atrocities carried out against the Sikh and Punjabi people, and speaking on the unlawful holding of Sikh political prisoners and the issues of Punjab's water being stolen by wider India. But unfortunately, that song Levels would end up being the final Sidhu released while he was alive, because soon after the release of that song, the new government, who he lost to at the election, would make a shock announcement that would ultimately wind up bringing about the demise of their latest and most powerful political opponent.